the leadership mindset for high ticket sales. If you've ever thought about sales and felt like you weren't good at it or you didn't feel like you were comfortable with it, this is the talk for you. I'm Dr. Lori McDowell, and welcome to this issue of Monday Mindset Mastery. Our guest today is Andrea Anderson, and she's going to tell us, we're going to talk a little bit about the leadership mindset and high ticket sales and how you can be successful at that. So hi, Andrea, how are you today?
Great. I'm so excited.
Can you hear me? Great.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Andrea, tell us a little bit about you and your journey and how you got to what you're doing today.
I had first sale at 6 years old. I sold some artwork to my parents. The first one was for a penny. The second was for 5 cents. And it's interesting. I've always found it interesting that what we do as children tends to show up as adults, and here I am helping Christian business owners with sales. But I started out in general as a coach. I was called to it in the early 2000s, before coaching was even heard of. And so I proceeded to get my certification. I did health coaching for a time, stepped into the business space. And then as I was really reflecting on the results that my clients were getting with me, there was a clear, strong indicator that it was in the sales area that I was really able to help them. So it kind of felt like a little bit like a full circle moment. On the personal side, I am originally from Canada, but I live in the Cleveland, Ohio area. I've also had the privilege of living overseas in England. I've been married to my husband. It'll be 24 years this year, and we have 4 children. And I'm getting ready to publish my first book, which will be coming out at the end of September this year.
Oh, congratulations on the first book. And yeah, I'm going to be celebrating my 24th anniversary next year. So that's a great,
that's
good
awesome.
number of years.
Yes.
So, yeah. So the topic today is sales and leadership. And a lot of people don't put those two words together very often. So tell us a little bit about how you connect, why sales really is related to leadership.
Mm-hmm. Well, as a member of Team Jesus, I believe that we are created for leadership. It's modeled in everything that we do. We have the natural inclination to want to follow someone. If you think about it, it's why social media actually works, right? Because we want to follow people that we see as leaders. Like, we can't disconnect the way that we relate to people from a leadership role. And likewise, like, we, in different areas of our life, we're going to show up on different sides of that coin. Sometimes we are the leader, and then sometimes we take more of that follower role. Well, what I realized in a sale, when you're in a sales conversation, like, I'm talking about the part where you actually are in the conversation with someone who is interested in your offer, you need to show up as a leader, because people follow leaders. They invest with leaders. And if you are not showing up in that way, if you're doubting your own leadership, it's going to show up in that sales conversation. And I believe it's one of the reasons why someone who on the surface looks like a good fit and on the surface should have invested with you, they will walk away, because on some level, they were picking up on you didn't really believe that you held that role as a leader yourself.
That's so true. And I've been in that situation where, I was selling something that I didn't, trying to sell something that I didn't believe in, or that I just didn't even want to do. And it was obvious, you're not going to sell it if you don't want to do it or you don't believe in it, but also if you don't see yourself as a leader, the person that could make a difference. It's interesting. I know you work a lot with Christian businesswomen, and you mentioned Jesus, and, some people at times, they think of sales as sleazy or such, but truly sales is service. And when you think about Jesus, he was, the ultimate servant leader salesperson. I mean, he gave people what they needed, and they were attracted to him because he was such a leader. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, how we could model ourselves to be truly, that sales really is serving people, and kind of get your thought on that idea.
A Christian that's selling industry, because as a Christian, you recognize that you're called to that. key thing. Like you're saying, if you are trying something that you don't as a business ourselves is because we see that need. Not trying to be like that used car salesman, manipulate people into buying something they don't want. It's showing up with the recognition. I started my business, I got into high ticket sales because I saw a great need and I have the solution for that person, like offering them living water. And I found that when you hold that perspective and it's about what that other person wants, and also getting curious about that too, right? It's not just making assumptions. You need to do your due diligence to ask the questions and really uncover, is this actually a good fit? As a business owner or the salesperson, if you're representing someone, do I feel like this person actually matches the profile of the people who get the best results with me?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that's really, in the high ticket sales area, really knowing that what you're offering is something that will really help the person is so important. And there are people that maybe, in your room or in your program that, you don't want to sell to them because it's not what they need or they're not in the right place. And I think people get a bad reputation when they do try to sell something, when they try to sell something to someone who's not ready. If you're selling something that's for people who are in one stage of their business, you don't want to sell it to someone who's before that or after that because it's not a good fit. So really I think having that relationship of trust, of knowing, what that person needs is really, really important. As you're going through the sales process, what are some tips on how you can, understand what that person really needs and if what you're offering is a good fit?
Mm-hmm. Well, it starts even before you're going to get into those sales conversations. So one of the first things I do with my clients is I make sure that they're really clear on who their ideal person actually is. This is kind of where it shares space with marketing, right? So like the marketer, you're like, yeah, that's the work I do. That work. But in having that conversation, what I'm listening for when I'm coaching somebody on this is, do they have any tiny grains of seed doubt that they have about who their ideal person is and why they are the best one to serve them? Because the tiniest seed of doubt is going to show up in the sales conversation. So we're digging deep into that. We're looking, what I call it the urgency factor as well. What I try to coach them around is, let's get really clear. Why does your ideal person want to work with you right now? Like not next week, not next month, not, maybe it's a better time when, no, who are the people that are ready to work with you right now? Because otherwise, to me, that's not ideal. If you're talking to someone who's not ready yet, it doesn't make sense for a business owner to have that be part of the ideal client profile. So I'm doing a little deeper dives on that, making sure they're really clear. And then, so you want to look at that. But when you show up in a sales conversation, so let's make the assumption you've actually done that due diligence. You know who your ideal person is. They are the one that is actually getting into the call. Well, then it's a matter of, and you've probably, if you've been in business a hot minute, you've probably heard this like 1,000 times. Like, you need to do less talking and much more listening in a sales conversation, because it isn't about you. It really is about the person. And we lead in a sales conversation by being a listener. And Jesus modeled this, for example. He asked questions. And that's the thing we need to do, is ask powerful questions so that we can uncover together with them, okay, let's explore, does this really make sense? Understanding where they are, where they want to go, what they're really struggling with. And then
Okay. My audio is going in and out. Looks like we just lost Andrea. So she hopefully will be back. The internet has been difficult today. So hopefully she will be back soon. I'm not sure what happened, but we'll let her rejoin. But I want to talk a little bit about what she said, because some of that really hit home with me. Here she is. Great. Let's add her back in. Hello.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it's like
no problem. The internet has been having, I don't know what it's doing today, but this is my third call and they've all been like weird.
I always take it as a sign there's like there's good stuff coming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I missed the last like 20 seconds of what you had said there. So I don't know if it went on the
Okay.
recorder or
So
not, but if you
about
can repeat. You talked about, you were talking about how you're listening more than you're hearing, and you're kind of
Mhm.
using that to really see that that right person is what they need and that they have that sense of urgency. Was there anything
Exactly.
else there that we missed?
Yes, and then this is especially critical when the objections come up, because when you're in high ticket sales, you actually don't want someone to just be like, take my money, without actually having them ask you questions, because chances are when you start working with them, they are going to have questions, and it's like, oh, maybe we should have addressed this before we, invested. So when objections come up, instead of necessarily taking what they say as face value, and this is really where the leadership happens, like you have to be so committed to being a leader in this part, because when you start talking about investment and actually making a decision, this is where their brain starts to get triggered, because suddenly it's like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't theoretical. I actually have to do something. And now, is this really the best way, the best use of my money? Is this really going to get me the results I'm looking for? Right. So a lot of times it's fear that is getting kicked up. And so you want to hold that leadership mindset to explore that with them. And essentially you're determining, is this fear that's giving rise to really what our excuse is? Or is this actually a sign that this actually is not a good fit at all? In which case, okay, like let's go our ways, or like let's just kind of keep in contact. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
leadership too,
no.
even in the follow-up as well.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I mean, often, sometimes when we feel like we're being too pushy, or we're being, too hard with the sale, I think it is because we haven't confirmed that this really is the right person, the right time, and that their objections are fears that are real, that can be addressed, not that they're not a good fit for the program. Because I know I've been in programs where I ended up buying them, and I afterwards, you have buyer's remorse, because you're like, this wasn't right for me. It sounded really great, and they took my money, and I started it, and it's like it was either, the timing was right or it didn't match, and that doesn't work. Yeah, the person got a little bit of money, but they're not going to get that relationship. You're not going to be a lifelong client. You're not going to really promote them, because it isn't a good fit. So I think knowing that it's that fit, and there are fits for all of us. There's so many people in the world. We don't have to try to sell to someone who's not the right fit. But you talked about being clear on who your audience is, and that's really important. I know a lot of people, I guess they have this FOMO, fear of missing out, that if they don't, if they're not they're going to miss the right clients by not being available for everyone. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. It's funny how it's like we hear that, like, you really need to create a focus, but I can help everyone, right? But you're not meant to help everyone. And this, for the Christian believer, this is where I also bring Jesus's example into it. When he was here on earth, he was very clear. He was primarily called to Israel, like, and he stayed in that lane, even though obviously he is for everyone. And, he had plans for how that was going to work out. But if we try to serve, this is what it comes down to. And it's a little bit less the sales side and more of the marketing side. The reason why you want to be focused on who you serve is because it does make the marketing so much easier, which absolutely factors into your sales conversations. It's like, for example, I could say I'm a business coach. I can help anyone in business. That is true. However, it's very different to help someone with, say, their operations or their marketing or time management than it is to talk about sales. So when it comes to marketing, when you have focus, it helps you to refine your messages so that you know exactly who you're talking to and what you're talking about. And I feel like this is especially critical because of the way we primarily do business nowadays, which is online, right? So we are in this massive sea, and somehow you have to stand out among the sea of everyone else in social media, online to begin with, but even within the niche in which you serve. And if you try to serve everyone, it's like diluting your message out in that sea. It's not concentrated. Now, if your business model is a little bit more highly relational, where you're having conversations, you might be able to get around that because you're meeting somebody one-on-one, but it's going to impact your marketing, which means when it gets to your sales conversations, that's when you start to see issues because you're like, well, why is this person coming to me? And another example that's commonly cited in this, it's like, if you have something going on with your brain, are you going to go to a general surgeon or a brain surgeon? Mm. And high ticket sales, it's that brain surgeon part, right? Like there's a reason. If you're in high ticket sales, I feel like there's a greater expectation that you are actually an expert in some lane. And if you're a generalist, it just waters down your ability to have that authority. I mean, you can do it, or you could try it.
I had not heard that analogy to the medical field, and it makes so much sense because, yeah, I mean, and really the general practitioners are not the ones that are charging the most. It's the specialists. So, and, and if it's interesting because if you are, very niche down and you know exactly who you're serving, that doesn't mean if someone else comes to you and they're a good fit and they don't fit in that role that you can't serve them. And that's what I think people, and that's happened to me. It's funny. I do retreats, and I was actually in a workshop on niching, and the person leading that workshop was not at all in my ideal, client. Yet he was really interested in what I had to say about retreats. And now I'm talking to him about booking a retreat for him, more of a custom thing. But it was like we were talking, we were talking about women, business owners, over 45, heart-centered coaches. And he was a man in a totally different field, yet what I talked about sounded good to him. So people will come to, that fear of missing out. If it's the right person that you're meant to work with and they hear your message, even if the message isn't directed to them, they're going to find you, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, they are.
So I think you have something coming up in the next, coming up in the near future. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. At the first week of September, I'm kicking off a 3-month mastermind called Kingdom Sales Acceleration. So it's specifically for the Christian business owner who is in the high ticket sales arena. Ideally, this is positioned more for someone who is already having sales conversations. If you're not generating enough leads where you haven't started having sales conversations yet, you could come in to learn about how to prepare for that, but the content is a little bit more directed to people who are having the conversation so we can troubleshoot some of those areas that they've seen come up. So there's a little bit more, because whenever I do my programs, Lori, it's always about meeting the business owner where they are and helping them to tweak and refine. And I found it's a little easier to do that when you have, okay, this is what's working for me and this is what is not working, right? But yes, it's a 3-month program, and the first month we're focused really on clarity and alignment. So making sure, for example, do you really know who your ideal person is? It's also about identity and intimacy with the Lord, because the people that I work with, like that's where everything needs to stem from, their intimacy and relationship with the Lord and their identity in Christ. Otherwise, there's not going to be alignment. And then the second month is really heavily sales focused. So spirit-led sales strategy, looking at how do we apply our faith to sales techniques and models that are out there in the world, like which ones do we keep and which ones do we tweak or ignore. And then the final month is really about refinement and multiplication. So continuing to do what is working, continuing to kick out what isn't, and really gaining momentum around those action steps that each business owner is specifically meant to take to grow their business.
I love that. thinking of certain people I'll have to introduce you to
Yeah,
who
that'd
might
be
be
wonderful.
really interested in that afterwards.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that sounds like an amazing program. And so I'm not going to get to, I have a final question, but I want to go a little bit more
Mhm.
into what you talked about earlier. And that was like the idea that people can tell if you're not a leader, if you're not authentic, if you're not, don't believe in
Mhm.
yourself. And how does
Yeah.
that fit into the program, helping people be true to who they are,
Mhm.
yet also be that sales, that leadership, that
Mhm.
selling that high ticket program?
Yeah.
Is there a mindset component? Is there a belief? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Oh, everything comes down to belief and mindset, right? And you're going to love that, right? As a mindset coach, like, you cannot separate your beliefs at all from anything you do. You can kind of fake it for a little bit, but at some point your brain is going to be like, there's there's a disconnect, and it's going to, so it requires you to either make a change, right? And to shift into what
Mhm.
you say you want to do or who you are, or it's going to keep, more often it keeps pulling you back, right? So I'm always listening in my clients for where is there a misalignment in beliefs? Like, where are they taking in the information and saying yes to it, but underneath there's something else going on where they're not really believing it, or there's something about that process that doesn't sit well. So let me give you an example of how this works. So one of my clients, who is just amazing, she just sent me a message today that said July was her highest month in sales this year. And I always love getting messages like that. And one of the things that we talked about was related to follow-up. So if someone didn't sign up with her right on the call, and based on her business model, a lot of the people would, because it's like a high-end product that comes with concierge service. So for the people that didn't immediately sign up, she would hesitate to follow up, within a couple days or even within a week, because she didn't want to come across as pushy. And everybody that I work with does not want to be pushy. They are highly purpose driven, highly relational. So they want nothing of like that ick factor to be part of how they show up in a sales conversation. The other thing that we also talked about was she knows with her business, especially, that getting Google reviews is critical because it's more of a locally based business. And yet she was hesitant to ask about that because she just had all of that feels like pushy, or I'm not sure. So anyway, we talked through it. I had to honor the fact of and acknowledge, well, this is where you are. But let's also look at how you could approach this in a way that still feels true to your values and how you want to show up in a sales conversation, how you want that experience to be for the person on the other end. So we figured it out. And so she's seeing higher conversion rates and her sales are going up, right? Because if you just ignore it, if you just tell people, well, this is what you have to do to be successful, and you're ignoring how they feel about it or what they believe deep down, like, that's why they're not showing up as leaders in sales calls, because there's a disconnect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So many of us know exactly what we're supposed to do or what we're told works. And yet if it doesn't feel right, it's hard to do it. And
Mhm.
some, and then some people say, well, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't feel right. But that's not necessarily the answer to a successful business, because you
Exactly.
cannot do it and you can manifest a successful business and think about it as much as you happen. But you do have to do the work. You do have to make the sales
Mhm.
calls, get the conversion. People are not just going to start throwing money at you
Mhm.
necessarily. So
Yeah, it would be
that's really
nice, but
right. Yeah.
it doesn't really happen.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it always reminds me of the guy in the flood who, have you heard that story about him?
Oh, yes, with the
Yeah, with the
helicopter.
flood, with the
Yes,
helicopter and the boat, and it's like,
yes.
so yeah, you have
Exactly.
to help
Yes. Like,
yourself
we
a
do
little
have
bit.
to do the work. Right. And what I've noticed when we have objections about how we show up in the sales call, that's an opportunity for growth. It could be, there is a reason why I need to stay committed and I need to own this like a leader, because I really don't want to show up that way. But then sometimes it is that I need to be challenged and I need to trust that stepping outside my comfort zone is okay, and that there's a way to do it that is consistent with my values and with what my ideal person needs.
Hmm. I love that. It's almost like you're taking the sales process and using it on yourself before you make
Mhm.
those calls. So
Yes. Oh,
let me
yes.
look at my objections. Look at my objective. What are my objections? What do I am comfortable with? And get
Yeah.
myself ready before the call.
Yes.
Okay, before we leave, well, first off, how can
Mhm.
people reach you if they want to learn more about your program or, this mastermind coming up, or if they just want to follow up with you? What's the best way to
Mhm.
reach you?
The best way would be at my website, andrealeeco.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. Are you sharing links? Because then they can just click the links.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
share the link if you.
Yeah. Yeah. So best social media to reach me is LinkedIn. And then again, my website, andrealeeco.com. And I'll spell that. So Andrea, ANDREA. Lee is LEIGH. And then CO at,
.com.
or yeah, just .com. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Yeah, and we'll put the link below the recording, but you've got it here.
Yeah.
So before we finish, I'd like to ask if you had just one tip to give to the audience, what would that be, Andrea?
Oh, yeah. One tip. Gosh, there's a few. But I think the one that I'm going to leave you with is a concept called mental rehearsal. So if you've never heard of mental rehearsal, it's a technique that athletes, especially professional athletes, use where they literally mentally walk through their performance and what they need to do. It's a way of actually doing that has been shown it helps with the muscle memory, but it's also helping prepare their brain for the possibility of or for winning. A lot of it's common for people to say, there's the fear of failure, but there is also the fear of success. And so mental rehearsal, for example, like helps calm that down. Like you have to prepare your brain for success. So the way that you can use mental rehearsal in a sales call is to practice, like it's almost like you're putting on that leadership mindset and how you need to show up. I recommend, even because our body has a somatic responses to what we're believing. So I also recommend doing this where you're adopting the posture of being a leader, right? A leader is going to be like shoulders back, up, like you're not like this, like hunched over, it's like, so we're practicing showing up in a leader and almost like walk yourself through the conversation. And you could do it a couple ways. Walking it through with someone who's like, yes, like sign me up, ready to go. That's easiest. But it's more effective if you mentally rehearse walking through a sales conversation where someone is going to have an objection, where they're going to be a little hesitant. And how are you going to show up and lead? That way it helps your body get used in your brain to get used to having that conversation. But the other thing, it's not really a tip, but if you do go to my website, I also have a sales alignment quiz that you can take. It's really simple. It's 7 questions, and it's going to show you also where there's alignment or misalignment showing up in your sales process. Because if you want to discover what I call your magnetically aligned sales approach, first we have to figure out where the misalignment is. It's creating that awareness, and then we can work on solving it. So I recommend definitely taking that to see where you are in 7 different areas in a sales conversation, and then where the biggest opportunity for growth is.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to take it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
even if you're great, you could always be better. So there's always
So
room
far,
for improvement.
I can even present it as a challenge. So far, nobody has come away with 100 or like a 10 out of 10 in all 7 questions. So
Right. So
I have yet to meet 100%er.
If you did, you may be hiring that person. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's true. Like if you are 100% and all that, then I guess I need to hire you, because so far that does even I'm not always at a 10 every single day, right? So I have to do this check myself. It's not like we don't always have it all figured out. And that's why we get support when we need it.
Right. Yeah, no, and that is a good point that, you may feel amazing one day and then the next day you wake up full of doubts and I would say, well, do what you can to get yourself out of those doubts, go through that, what you need. And if you have to, postpone the calls. Don't do the sales calls on those days where you're full of doubt, because the person you're talking to is going to sense that. So this has been great, Andrea. Thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. And I mean, these tips were invaluable to help us grow our businesses and serve the right people, because really sales is about service. When you're selling a product that someone needs, I mean, you're doing them a disservice if you're not offering that product you know, that product to them, because that product could change their life. And if they don't get it, you know, you really are serving them by getting them what they need. And when you're selling to the right person, someone truly aligned with you, it makes sense. So thank you so much. And please, you know, reach out. Well, I'll put the link to Andrea's website on the, but it's andrealeeco.com, and you can reach out to her on LinkedIn as well. So we'll have that there. Thank you for attending this version of Monday Mindset Mastery. Next week, my guest will be Tatiana Bowers, and Tatiana talks about how you can have a drama-free business, especially those of you with employees, because that's something that's really important. So thank you, Andrea, and everyone have a fantastic day.
Bye. Thank you, Lori.